Help us change the culture by buying our latest single from Timcast Records, Only Ever Wanted, by clicking the link in the description below. I'm going to jump to the story as kind of a hard segue. Post Millennial reports Truth Social banned from Google App Store over content moderation. A Google spokesperson said that Truth Social lacks content moderation needed to meet Google Play's terms of service. According to The Hill, the spokesperson said that Truth lacks... Okay, so they wrote that twice. This comes after Truth Social CEO Devin Nunes claimed last week that the Android version of the platform's app is ready, waiting only on Google's approval. On August 19th, we notified Truth Social of several violations of standard policies in their current app submission and reiterated that having effective systems for moderating user-generated content is a condition of our terms for any app to go live on Google Play. Google is reportedly particularly concerned about violations of its policies prohibiting content with physical threats and incitement to violence. So this is a really interesting story because it's just the next link in the chain of censorship. And if we're talking about people's ability to learn because of the internet, they're clearly trying to stop that.
But the thing I thought you were going towards is if we're going to have a curriculum on the internet and they can control what's in that curriculum, then that's just one more step towards that globalist woke nirvana we wanted dragging this entire country down. So there is that trap. That was a tough one. Whoever is going to be the next secretary of the Department of Education needs a vision somewhere along the line. But this bigger issue of the social media conglomerates, I get back to the FBI working hand in hand with Twitter, Facebook. And by the way, there's a fascinating, funny, tragic story in the Taking Back Trump's America book as to how Twitter and Facebook wound up being so aggressive against Trump in 2020. I don't know if you guys know this, but after Trump won the election in 2016, Brad Parscale, who was at that point during the 2016 campaign, the social media director, he became the campaign manager in 2020. He goes on 60 Minutes, and in the big reveal, as he's claiming victory for the Trump victory through his manipulation of social media, he reveals that Twitter and Facebook had employees inside the Trump campaign actively trying to help the Trump campaign message, right? And as soon as that news hit, all hell broke loose across this country, and particularly in Silicon Valley. And it was at that point where Jack Dorsey at Twitter, Zuckerberg of Facebook, Pichai at Google said, not in 2020. And it's very clear now in hindsight that social media did everything they could to skew that election in favor of Biden and against Trump. And that's a really powerful thing. And now, this is just... This
is part of why... I'll just throw it to Andrew Breitbart again. I think he's the one who said politics is downstream from culture. And then you look at the social media censorship. A large component of that is inhibiting the ability of a culture to form and develop. Banning Alex Jones, banning Milo Yiannopoulos and people like Laura Loomer because they were influential, because they were having an impact on culture, so they had to be erased. Truth Social. This is a really good example. I was saying for a long time that Trump should have gotten off of Twitter, launched his own platform, or used Minds or Gab or something like that. And he didn't do it until recently with the launch of Truth Social. But this is actually a good example of probably why he didn't. They just banned the entire app outright. Yeah. They didn't just ban one person.
Yeah.
Google said we will ban every single person all at once because they want to control what is allowed to be said.
And they want to limit the appearance of Trump's influence in culture. They don't want him to be able to influence culture, I would say, especially heading into midterms.
Yep.
I'm a big Getter fan. I call Getter the Twitter killer. And one of the things that's been really interesting about getting on Getter, it has all the functionality of Twitter with a lot more elegance and live stream capabilities. But what I'll do is I'll post identical content on Twitter and on Getter and then watch what happens. And what you see is the shadow banning that Twitter does. You can have exactly the same amount of followers on both platforms, and you get much more social engagement on Getter because of the algorithms that lay deep inside the Twitter autocracy. And you would never be able to detect that unless you had Getter doing the same content.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
you need the
really kind of
comparison.
scary, right? And it's been interesting. A couple of times I've tweeted on Twitter about about this, and you've been, I guess the Twitch censors are active shadow banning, and for like a little time after that, things got a little better. But it's scary that that's the way it works. And remember, Tim, it's like when Zuckerberg's talking about how he was able to suppress information about the Hunter Biden laptop. It was like he was explaining he did it through algorithms, which would suppress the information from coming up to the top layers. So they know how to do this. And that's like the evil genius of these people. They really know. I mean, this is Goebbels in the 21st century here. They're really good at what they do, and that's scary.
The way it was explained to me is that they want to make sure people who support Trump are still active, because when you censor people, it causes splashes. They don't want people to go to Getter or Truth Social or whatever. They want them to stay where they are. And they're worried that if they make too big of moves, it will cause a ruckus. But they also want to censor just enough to make it to put it at a disadvantage so the left wins. So it's basically like you got two people running a race. One person's pretty fast, one person's kind of slow. So what do? You crack one person in the foot, and then they can't race as well, but they're still there. They're still running, but they just can't make it. Yeah. That's kind of the idea with how they're handling censorship. They don't mind certain channels that exist so long as the more influential ones get hobbled.
I think that's right.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think that's right.
Did you use Getter as your alternative platform?
Interesting. Getter, I think it launched July over a year ago, and what you saw was the collapse of
Traffic.
Twitter stock.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
oh, yeah.
Which is really, if you look at, I mean, Twitter's in many ways a dying company. It's like for Elon Musk to go in and buy it, it's like there were people on my side of the fence who thought that was a good idea and, we're going to liberate Twitter. But in fact, Twitter was dying. Okay, it's like because other platforms were coming on that really did its job better without the censorship. So yeah, I don't know how that game will play out, but it's so the other thing that's so embedded now. If you go to like a newspaper article in the mainstream media, right, and you want to do something with it, Facebook and Twitter have the monopoly on that. So that builds. So I mean, I think we need to build an alternative information infrastructure that we can use freely without censorship. But boy, is that a lot of work.
Yeah, we're building that now, actually. Well, we're building a lot of stuff. I think, oh man, it's a depressing, monumental task, what it feels like right now, because you can't break up Facebook. Break up Facebook, you're going to have Facebook Messenger, Facebook Prime, Instagram. You're going to have all these separate companies. Zuckerberg's going to still own them all. He's still going to have all the code, and the monopoly is still going to be there. So I think the only way to do it, or at least the best way to do it, is to make them free their software code. You force them to open up their algorithms so that other people can not only watch what they're shadow banning, if they're shadow banning it, what they're tweaking, if they're tweaking, but that you can actually take it and spin up your own version of the website that interoperates with their site. So like if I'm on Facebook, I can see people that have your version of it. If I'm on your version of it, I can see people on Facebook, but there's now there's competition, but it becomes less competition of code, more competition of terms of service. So what system has the best terms of service? Which one's screwing you over the least? And people will migrate there.
I mean, one good thing about the Musk thing is with this lawsuit is that he may have subpoena power or deposition power to get to the truth about what they actually do, and that'll be fascinating.
Whether he buys the platform or not.
Yes.
Now in this suit, discovery is a possibility.
Yes. Yes.
Ooh, they're not going to like that.
No, they're not going to like that at all because they got stuff to hide.
Yeah,
They got stuff to hide.
he's subpoenaed Jack Dorsey. He subpoenaed this whistleblower. I mean, a whistleblower came out. So even if he doesn't win, well, actually, him winning means him not buying Twitter. So I would hope he loses. You know,
has to buy it.
Yeah,
You want him to buy it? Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
I just as soon see it as roadkill on the Getter and Truth Social superhighway.
Yeah, I think Elon Musk taking over would be a good thing, though. But
Well, let me
At the very
challenge
least,
you
what's
on
coming
that
out?
because I've had this debate with a couple of pro Musk folks. Here's what bothers me about Elon Musk, and it's a death blow. That SOB took all his money and went over to communist China, and he's building
factories.
Teslas.
Yep.
And his
Praising 'em.
entire future is dependent on one whim of Xi Jinping. Okay? So he's got to kiss China's butt every single day of the week.
And he does.
And he does. And as long as he's doing that, that's not good for America. And by the way, that's why he's not as warm to Trump. Okay? He doesn't love Trump because
Yeah.
Trump is the one guy he wants to find
These-
some Republican he can embrace that won't shut his Tesla companies down
These
in
wealthy-
communist China.
The wealthy elites are hedging their bets with China. That's what they've been doing.
Yeah.
They've been buying money, putting property there, but it's all basically swearing fealty to Xi Jinping.
Yes.
Because at any moment, he could take those factories from
Yes.
you, snap his fingers.
I got to talk to you about repositioning the United States as the top industrial power on Earth. I mentioned at the beginning of the show that we can recapture carbon from the atmosphere. We're going to start mining the carbon dioxide out of the air and the methane out of the air, turning it into carbon dioxide, depositing it onto different metals, palladium, gold, copper, or putting it through other chemicals to turn it into graphene, which is pure carbon, hexagonally latticed, like a honeycomb lattice, single layer of carbon, pure carbon. And it's conductive, like more conductive than copper. It's stronger than steel. You can make touchscreen wallpaper out of it. You can make clothing out of it. It's going to be the 21st century building material. And if we start this mining operation now in the United States, we'll be able to say, hey, because what's going to happen is people are going to start mining it, and they're going to start mining too much if we're not careful. They'll start competing with the trees, and they'll start killing off the trees because we've taken all the carbon dioxide too much out. So we need to work with the globe to figure out how much carbon we're supposed to be putting out and taking back. But I think it could be a multi-trillion-dollar industry at the very least. I don't even think it has to be about money at this point because it's really about the sustainability and survival of our species. But I think the United States is the place to build it.
Well,
I don't know.
We
China-
talked offline before the show about the insanity of trying to solve the carbon issue on the demand side, because no matter how much we save here in the U.S., China and India is going to do more. But
It's not just-
Go ahead.
It's not just that.
Yeah.
There's a mathematical equation that tracks this. If you start to, let's say we replace energy consumption, we replace our energy sources with nuclear. We start setting up these nuclear power plants. Then you will have people buying carbon-based, fossil fuels for other purposes. Basically, with cheap energy availability, people still want to grow and expand and use more energy. So if you were to replace the entire U.S. grid with nuclear power, that's great. We would reduce our carbon footprint, and then everyone would be like, awesome, now that energy is so cheap, I can buy more gas to do these things.
Yeah. So I'm with you on the what we should have been doing for a long time now and haven't been is working on carbon capture, ways to do that. That's really the only sensible kind of thing. And I go back to my first job in government in the 70s is in the Department of Energy, a summer intern, right? And I was like trying to figure out how to reduce our oil import dependence on the Middle East because it was causing wars and embargoes and poverty and all that kind of stuff like that. Never, ever did I imagine in the 1970s could this country ever become energy independent. But we did that during the Trump administration because of a change in technology, fracking. And so this is how I think we're going to get out of the climate change box, if you believe we're in one. It's that carbon capture has to be the only sensible way to do that. Otherwise, you're going to force Americans to save, every family saves a pound of carbon, and meanwhile the Chinese create two pounds for every pound we save, and
Black gold, baby.
they wind up being the leaders of the world and the prosperous country, and we can't have that for a lot of reasons.
Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. But if you want to check out the full show live, tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And if you want more special access content, head over to timcast.com and become a member. Your membership helps sustain this company, keep our journalists employed, makes this show happen, and you will get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast, and there's a massive library to check out. So again, go to timcast.com or tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., and we'll see you all there.